Welcome to the BJ Show. Let's rock and roll. Rock and roll. Come on, everybody. Let's lose control. Brad and John, they're the ones to follow. Yeah, ready for the ride. It's the BJ Show. BJ Show.
It is the BJ Show, and this is April 24th, 2025. This is the A block, which means this is the top of the hour block. We start right up to the top of the hour news and stuff like that. I am Brad. That is John Combest. Good morning, John. How you doing?
I'm good, Brad. Thank you for asking.
John, I love questions, and I use questions quite a bit. And I understand this morning that you have a question for me. Is that true?
Oh, do I? What's the question, Brad?
What would you do with a brain if you had one?
I don't know, John. I really don't know.
Now, Brad, you got that from the movie Wicked, right? Isn't that quote from the movie Wicked, or is it from Wicked 2? Did you get a leaked version of Wicked 2?
What would you do with a brain if you had one?
No, that's from the original. That's from the OG. That's from the actual Dorothy script. That's Judy Garland.
No way. Was there a movie that came before Wicked?
Yes.
I thought Wicked was the original screenplay.
Believe it or not, there was. Okay, John Combest is a guy who puts together this incredible website, and almost as incredible as this new website that's popped up. We'll talk about that later. Anyway, John Combest puts together this incredible website. He's done it for 23 years, and every single day he puts together a list of all the important stuff you should know about. It's on his website, johncombest.com. You take a look at it, you click on the link, it'll take you to a story, and as we learned over the past couple of weeks, at first John said he never links to a government site, and then he started backpedaling and says, well, occasionally I link to a government site.
You're right. I didn't backpedal. I clarified. But good point, Brad. Good effort in the point. Good attempt to try to make a valid point.
You clarified.
You do that a lot on the show.
You sound like Ed Golterman. That would be an Ed Golterman line. I don't criticize, I clarify. Okay.
There we go, Brad.
Okay.
So the point is I don't link to government websites, but I do link to news stories from across the state of Missouri that have to do with state government or our federal officials in Washington, D.C.
Well, now hold it. You told me you did link to government sites sometimes, like for election results and things like that.
Yeah, are we going to revisit this again?
No, we're just going to bring this guy in right now. What's your name again, sir?
I'm Casey Kasem.
And he counts them down. And we start off with?
In third place,
Brad, I do appreciate your generous intro where you talk about the fact that, I've done this for a while now. And back when I started the website in 2001, one of the most pressing issues in the state of Missouri was the manufacture and addiction around methamphetamines, popularly known as meth. And it was a huge deal in the early 2000s. Do you remember how much that was ravaging our state, Brad?
Well, it still is, isn't it? It hasn't stopped.
Yeah. Hey, listen, you bring up a great point, Brad. And that's really the crux of story number 3 today is as we've seen a bit of a decline in at least mainstream news coverage of methamphetamines. And I think addiction experts would say that methamphetamine use has been on the decline. We have a proposal in the Missouri legislature this year from a gentleman named Mike Henderson. I believe Mike's from the Bonne Terre area. But it would increase the amount of, you could call them methamphetamine precursors. So let's just call them allergy medicine, Brad. Like pseudoephedrine and ephedrine products that folks use, like we'll just call it Sudafed for now. Right now, Missouri has one of the most restrictive laws for how much Sudafed you can get in the course of a year. And Mike Henderson's bill would allow what he says consumers to purchase up to what would be tantamount to about 8 months supply of Sudafed. So if you want to stock up on Sudafed, Mike Henderson says in this piece, and I should call out too that this is brought to us by Hannah Taylor of the Columbia Missourian. And Mike Henderson says, hey, as I'm doing right now, I've got allergies right now. I'm suffering from allergies right now. And this increase in purchase limits brings Missouri in line with surrounding states while leaving in place common sense limits. So under this bill, Brad, it looks like by my rough math here, it would increase the amount of pseudoephedrine type products or ephedrine type products that you could purchase from 43.2 grams to 61.2 grams. So about a 50% increase. And Brad, you'll remember that for years, one of the biggest controversies in the state people who disliked Missouri would frequently point out that Missouri was the only state at the time that was not involved in a prescription drug tracking program. Missouri is involved in that program now. So Henderson's point, Brad, just to cut to the bottom line, is that it's time for us to increase the amount of pseudoephedrine and the amount of cold medicine that folks can purchase. Just because this stuff could be used to make methamphetamines doesn't mean that we should punish allergy sufferers.
John, hey, would you, I already know the answer to this question, but would you ever take any kind of medication that you possibly knew had been cooked up by some toothless dude in the bathroom of his double wide? Would you ever consume any?
Absolutely not. And one of the stories that stuck with me on a campaign trail, when Jim Talent ran for governor in 2000, he told the story. And remember, you'll remember this well, Brad. This was the period of time, the late 90s, early 2000s, when meth was really ravaging specific areas of Missouri. Talent told the story that he would go out with law enforcement, and the most popular place to cook the meth was a toilet, because when authorities came, you just flush it and you're done, and there's no evidence. And that, as if I wasn't grossed out enough by meth, like knowing that sometimes it might be cooked in some Hoosier's bathtub or in a toilet. I mean, come on.
I don't get it. I never will. I've never been a legal drug user. Matter of fact, I don't even like to use legal drugs to the point where I have gotten prescriptions in the past that I either never filled or I filled and I stuck it in somewhere and I never used it. I'm just not that guy.
I know exactly what you mean, Brad. And just personal anecdote here. I've had a bad back over the years here and there, and I've been given muscle relaxers and opiates, and I get so high from them that I don't take them. Sometimes I have to take a muscle relaxer in order to get my back to stop, spasming. But other than that, I'm just such a dope when I'm on them.
I know. I know that feeling quite well, and unfortunately, I've had that where to the point where I won't. One time I had a prescription, I guess 2 or 3 years ago, from a doctor. Same thing, back issue, and it made me so tired. I just wanted to do nothing but lay down and sleep all day long. Going, not for me.
I think for some people, I guess that's the idea of the high. What I think is unique about this, Brad, is that I guess, and I'm not a drug expert here in terms of the trends, but when we've seen the explosion of fentanyl, which is an opiate, and a decline of methamphetamine, I would think the Brad Hildebrands of the world would point out that with methamphetamines or some sort of stimulants, you might be convinced to go out and do more work or go out and be more productive. But with the rise of opiates, you're more likely to, I guess, just want to lay on the couch or lay in public by a veterans memorial and pass out. I don't know.
Sort of like marijuana. Is that what you said?
Yeah, I guess it would be a little bit closer to that, yeah.
Okay. We ready for number 2?
I think we are.
Up a notch to number 2.
We're going to jog down I-44 to a story that's brought to us by the Associated Press. There's a woman named Kate Rumback. She covers national stories, but this is a national story about the terror brought about by the Trump administration. Brad, you were a police dispatcher at one time, right?
Yes, sirree. Put myself through college that way.
And I'm going to put you on the spot in a minute and ask you a question. So be on high alert. It has to do with police dispatching. But there's a gentleman at Missouri State University, and his name is Anjan Roy. He's a computer science student, and he's from Bangladesh. So he came here in 2024. He finished up his undergraduate degree, and now he's getting a master's degree in computer science from Missouri State University. But then terror struck, and his legal status as an international student had been terminated. Now, Brad, I'll just get to the punchline here, which is eventually a judge says, no, that's not right. He can remain in the United States. So that scare is done. But here's the worst part, Brad. Thousands of students, according to this Associated Press piece, have been on the brink of terror since the Trump administration has paused or in some cases revoked the visas, put these folks in a questionable legal status. Now, here's the part where I need your help with, Brad. When you were a police dispatcher, you dealt with people that had a medical emergencies. Can you describe the state of shock? Like if someone goes into medical shock, what happens to them?
Well, it depends on the person. Some people become very, frazzled and crazy and nuts and yelling and screaming. Other people go the other way, where they're just like, I think I shot myself. You know what I mean? And
Like comatose,
right.
in other words, is what you're saying.
And everybody else is somewhere in between. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I get. Okay, so it's like a spectrum. Well, that's helpful. I wanted your insight here because Mr. Roy, who again is a grown man, when he's asked how he felt, he says, "I was in literal shock." Like, what the hell is this? So Mr. Roy says he went into literal shock. Do you think it's possible, Brad? And I think it's important here. If we're going to say literal shock, we should mean it. Do you think it's possible that Mr. Roy was so traumatized by the Trump administration that he went into legitimate medical shock?
I don't. Well, I'd have to take a look at what the official designation or official dictionary definition of shock is. But I would say that you can't put yourself into shock willingly. I think shock is something that your body does because you've been stabbed or shot or blown
You've lost
up.
a lot of blood or something.
Right,
Or there's something
right.
traumatic injury.
Right. You
correct?
talk to paramedics and things like that. They'll tell you a story that people's body changes dramatically when they have a severe injury because essentially it's the mechanism of the body to try to save itself. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like one of the things which is sort of counterproductive at times. But if your blood pressure starts to drop, let's say you cut yourself very severely, and your blood pressure starts to drop, your heart will pump faster to try to keep the blood pressure up, which unfortunately exacerbates the situation that you're going to bleed out. If that makes any sense. But
It makes perfect sense. I took us to a very macabre place here, Brad. I didn't mean to.
well,
this morning.
I don't. To answer your question, I don't think that he can put himself into textbook medical shock just by having a letter show up in his mailbox one day. Hey, you don't have a student visa anymore. Get the hell out.
Yeah. Well, here's the thing. Maybe English isn't his native language too. So let's give him a break there. So judges across the country have issued temporary restraining orders. Now, this gentleman says the only thing that maybe he could have gotten in trouble with is that in 2021 he was hanging out and he was at a dorm and there was a fight and there was like a little incident, but he wasn't charged with anything, Brad. Like, it's not like he did anything seriously wrong. Certainly nothing to have the Trump administration want to kick him out. But we will see so many victimhood stories like this coming throughout. The media loves these stories of a poor computer science nerd. And this kid says, and then I had to tell my professors that I was too scared to come to class. So I didn't come to class for a couple months. I had to let them know that I wasn't going to be there. I guess it was a few weeks. It wasn't a couple months. But he had to let his professors know he wouldn't be there for a few weeks because he was so scared, Brad. You never know when an ice agent's going to jump out from the bushes at Missouri State and bring in.
Is that true that he didn't show up for class for a couple of weeks because he was scared?
Yeah, that's a true story. Yeah, he was just very frightened. Like when you have something this jarring. Brad, I don't know if you've ever been in a state of shock for weeks, but you can't go to class when you're in a state of shock.
Don't get me going about this because of the fact that I graduated with. I'm not bragging. I'm just telling the story. I was able to do this because of the fact that at the time SIUE was on the quarter system. I just went year round. I graduated from my bachelor's in 2 years and 9 months or something like that. And part of my if someone asked me, how did you do that? I never missed a class. I showed up for I think in the entire time I went to school.
I believe that, Brad. I completely believe that about you.
Well, but the point being is, it's sort of like it's a game. You know what I mean? If someone says at the beginning of you're playing, I don't play board games, but let's say you're playing Monopoly and someone gives you the brief set, okay, here's how you win. You listen carefully and think, okay, I think I have the rules to the game right there. And you play accordingly, right? That's the same thing with a lot of things in life, and that was college. You show up for every stupid class. If the professor tells you this should be in on the 21st, it's in on the 21st. You ask questions. It's not difficult. I just don't get it. I don't understand it. But let's bring this up in B Block because I find it fascinating that all these. I can't believe that the Trump administration is sitting somewhere with like a, you talked about that. Who is the state rep who brought the bingo spinner into
Scott Cups,
Okay.
from Shell Knob.
Okay, I can't believe that some in the dark bowels of the White House, there's like a bingo spinner machine with people's names on it. Go, okay, who we're going to deport? And somebody reaches in. Oh, Iswami Kapami. He's in Rolla, Missouri. We're going to throw him out of the country.
Yeah, we're going to scare the natives of Phelps County.
Well, I don't think that's going on. Don't you think there's really something behind most of these?
Yeah. Oh, yeah, absolutely. Of course there is. And you know what? I would not be surprised if the Trump administration in some way, Doge is using AI and is saying, okay, there's a way to run a check on a database where if we check these certain number of boxes, here's the people that are most likely to be here illegally or have committed crimes while they're here.
God, AI is so impressive.
And here's the people that are most likely to go into shock by a letter. You know who else is going to get shocked? People at story number 1, Brad.
The number one.
Oh, there might be a little bit of sticker shock, or I guess mailbox utility statement shock. The headline from the Post-Dispatch's Jacob Barker today. Missouri PSC okays Ameren rate hike. It's the first of several looming utility rate increases. Now, Brad, it's important that we delineate here this rate hike story from the utility bill that was passed in the legislature this year that was signed by Governor Kehoe. We talked about that. I think back on Monday, we talked about that bill. And that's something completely separate. So it's going to be easy to combine those stories. But this rate hike for Ameren was completely separate from that utility bill. So let's get to this one first. The Missouri PSC yesterday approved the rate hike. And in general, it will cost the typical household about $1,000 more every year. Now, that's according to the math that's done by consumer groups. And going back to the utility bill for a minute, the utility bill that was passed and signed by Governor Kehoe says that Ameren and other utilities can charge ratepayers for the construction of certain energy facilities. That's called construction works in progress, or QUIP. What this bill is, this is just a typical rate increase. This is just Ameren saying, hey, cost of producing energy is going up. Cost of doing what we do is going up. We need more money from ratepayers. So, consumer groups are pretty upset about this. And then when you step back, Brad, in the broader scheme of everything that's going on, we have 2 other groups that are coming forward and are asking for rate hikes in the next few weeks as well. Missouri American Water is asking for a rate increase, and Spire is also asking for a rate increase. So over a period from spring to summer, we're going to see a lot more talk about utility rate hikes. To be more specific here too, Missouri American Water is in the midst of a rate increase expected to be decided by the PSC within days. So that's coming right away. And then a little bit later, Spire is seeking a 15% rate increase that could hike heating bills by about $14 every month. So if you add these up, Brad, it looks like it's going to be an expensive utility rate year.
Missouri American has a new program. We've kidded about this, but it's actually true, where you can essentially request where your water comes from. And to fight these increases, they say, like, if you want your water from the Mississippi, that's another $10 a month. If you want your water from the Missouri, that's $15 a month. But what's interesting is one of the choices is if you choose to have your water come from Coldwater Creek, your water bill goes down by $50 a month. So that's one of the things.
And they have a deal with Ameren because it's actually, because it's so radioactive, it can also provide light to your home at night.
That's right. If
you run it through a certain tube, it can provide lighting.
Right. If you have to take out the copper piping in your house. You have to put in special PVC piping that essentially, when the water's in that, it illuminates the room. So everybody, so what you do is you're instead of having the pipes inside your wall, you have the plumber come in. You put the pipes outside your wall. That way, you won't have to worry about lighting in your house anymore. Okay.
And then you could capture rainwater as well. I know we're up against time here, Brad. What I don't know is, if you are a guy that loves fossil fuels and you're a guy that's not into solar and wind, so this describes me as a customer, and Ameren's like, hey, we need more money energy's expensive now. I don't know the argument other than saying I don't want to pay more every month. I don't know the argument against Ameren raising rates. Do you see my point here? Like, I want to be able to make an articulate argument of why Ameren shouldn't get this. But if it costs more to produce energy and energy is getting more expensive, like, what are we supposed to do about it?
Well, I guess the thing that bothers me about this is you get the Republicans, oh, we're going to cut taxes. And then you got guys like Dave Schatz who increases your taxes. And then he says, but I'm a great Republican. No, you're not. You put that stupid gas tax in. That's your deal,
Are you calling him a rhino, Brad? Are you pulling some rhino radio here? What's going on?
All I know is if Dave Schatz showed up at the Tracy station, they would not let him in the door. They would just say,
that's probably true.
Matter of fact, I don't know if you know this or not, but they have, like when you go into, buildings now, a lot of times, places, matter of fact, I don't know if you know this or not, but there's a new technology. Some of the hospitals around town use it. Some of the casinos use it, where it looks like you're walking through a metal detector, and technically you are, but it's a metal detector that's set up to detect weapons, specifically, guns and knives and things like that.
Oh, wow, okay.
Tracy at her station has a special one that when you walk through the front door, it detects rhinos, and essentially there's another thing that if it detects a rhino, a ramp comes up and a hole in the floor opens in her office, and you go and you go out and you take you out the back door and dumps you into the trash dumpster. That's what she's got at her radio station.
And you go especially to that St. Charles dump where they put all the yard signs, right, Brad? The yard sign Nazi puts you right in there.
That's outside the St. Peter's City Hall. That's the true story, by the way. Okay, we have to take a break.